Everyone, welcome to the Way of Champions podcast. This is John, and super excited today to be with our good friend Sam Morse. Sam is a U.S. ski team World Cup skier. Started skiing at the age of 23 months, growing up in Maine, and has since become this just phenomenal skier. In the 2024 season, he was ranked in the top 30 in FIS points, the international rankings for downhill and Super G skiing, so the speed events. He was the 2017 World Downhill Junior Champion and has represented the United States for many years now on the World Cup circuit. And I met Sam, and I know his wife Mackenzie very well. They attended one of our Way of Champions conferences, I think back in 2019, and just great guy, great person. And I, of course, as you all know, am fascinated by skiing, and I'm a huge skier, but was never a ski racer. And so the mindset of skiing is such a important thing, I think. How do we overcome fear? How do we get past crashes and mistakes and things like that? And so these are all the things we're going to explore today. What does it take to be an elite World Cup level skier and downhill racer going 70, 80, 90 miles per hour? Um, on an icy slope that's pretty darn steep. So we're going to explore all of this with Sam today. Now, before we jump in, I just want to thank all of our premium members and Patreon podcast champions, the people who pay an annual contribution or a monthly contribution to support the podcast and help Jerry and I put this out. If you want to become a supporter, you can go to changethegameproject.com and sign up for a premium membership and get access to all of our online courses, every single one we've ever made, plus curated podcasts broken out by parents, coaches, and athletes, and then also our best blog posts for each one of those as well. Or you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/way of champions. And this is all in the show notes as well. And we'll give you a shout out on our podcast for supporting us. All right. Same thing with bulk book orders and all that sort of stuff. And then also, we are booking our speaking engagements. Most of fall 2025 is full. We have a couple spots left in October and November. But then spring of 2026, we have a lot of openings, but just starting to book those. So if you're interested in having me come into your school, your sports club, your coaching event, whatever it is, to do some talks to parents, coaches, athlete leaders, just email me, john@changethegameproject.com. Okay. And then finally, of course, last but not least, our amazing podcast sponsor, Sprocket Sports. They have been a supporter for many years now and help us put out this podcast every single week now for from their part of it for quite a few years now. So if you are looking for an amazing player registration system, team communication tool, the beautiful front end website, incredibly easy to use back end billing system and financial compliance system. Check them out, sprocketsports.com/CTG. It's a company built by people who understand youth sports and who understand compliance and financial compliance. And they've all been on both sides of that. And so they really know what clubs want and what clubs need. And the best I've ever used. So check them out, sprocketsports.com/CTG, or just let them know that you heard about them on the Way Champions. But for now, get ready, get set. It's Sam Morse. What's it like to ski wicked fast? Sam, welcome to the Way of Champions. I'm so excited we finally got you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're a busy man, world traveler with the U.S. ski team, and Dartmouth student when you're not traveling with the ski team. And so it's great to finally catch up here and have this conversation. I've kind of been wanting to have it since, I mean, it was quite a few years ago. You attended the Way of Champions conference with your now wife, Mackenzie. We got to meet for the first time. So you're here.
Yes, finally here. Tough guy to nail down. On the road,
Yeah,
like 300
awesome.
days a year, but the power of Zoom can help us connect. So
The
this is good.
power, the power of Zoom. So I was reading as I was getting ready for this, just all different websites from US Ski Team and everything, try to learn more about you. And then the thing one of the things that popped out right away, on Fisher, who I believe is your ski sponsor, says your motto is ski wicked fast. So tell us about ski wicked fast. That's obviously also a nod to your New England roots, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I grew up in Maine, so we use wicked to describe anything good. And if something's wicked good, then it's really good. So yeah, when you sign posters and sign cards for kids, different people have a slogan. So I always just write, to so and so, ski wicked fast, and then put my name.
It's such a cool thing though. Like, I don't think people understand how fast Wicked Fast is,
Yeah.
for what you do. It's mind-boggling to me. So talk about ski. I mean, you were first on skis. You were like 2 years old, right? And did you come with your parents ski racers, or I know your brother was?
Yeah, so I started skiing at 23 months, so just before I turned two, so I can claim I skied when I was one. My parents were just avid skiers, not ski racers by any means. My brother was 4 years older than me, and he got into ski racing and kind of laid a lot of the roots for it. But I was super fortunate to have grown up at Sugarloaf Mountain in Maine, and there's a premier ski academy there that I went to for high school. And that's really what, gave me the skills and the time on snow to raise to the level of being able to make the national team out of high school and been on the national team for 10 years now, racing internationally and now, primarily on the World Cup circuit, which is totally a little kid dream come true.
What I mean, as a kid, like, do you remember the first time you were like, I want to race in the World Cup? Like, when did that become something versus less? I just want to try to keep up with my older brother.
Yeah, my brother got to go out to the 2002 Olympics, and I didn't get to go because I was only six at the time.
Hmm.
But I remember being really jealous of him getting to go to that event and being like, man, I want to go there someday, but I want to go as an athlete. So it was pretty early on. I wasn't even racing really at that point. I got into racing when I was like nine or so, but I
Hmm.
just loved skiing. And I loved going fast. And I'll say this year I hit a new personal record. In Wengen, Switzerland, I hit 95 miles an hour. So to give
Jesus,
you a sense of what is wicked fast, and that's in the midst of like a course with turns and jumps and other things that are happening. So that's how fast we go.
95. I mean, that's like it's beyond belief. I've seen these guys in the suits and the 240, skis trying to break the record, but they're just going straight down. There's no jumps and turns and all that sort of stuff as well. Because I've also heard you say, I like the air too. I like to fly.
Oh yeah.
So like, what's the life of like a young ski racer like? Because I don't know, not a lot of our listeners are familiar with the sport. I am, because I was never a ski racer, but I'm an avid skier, and I've worked with a lot of the racing clubs around the country, and US Ski and Snowboard and stuff like that. And so I'm fascinated by this, but like, when you decide to race, because like I feel like a lot of kids as well, like there's so much discipline required in racing when your buddies are out skiing powder and you're like, I gotta go run gates. So what's the mindset of being that ski racer attached to this goal?
It certainly helped growing up in New England because there wasn't powder to go to. And all my friends were ski racing. I know that's probably a harder sell.
Yeah.
Out west, it's definitely like what my friends did. So initially, like it was a social thing. Like, when you're
Yeah.
9, 10, like you just go ski race because it's fun and because your friends are doing it. So I would say that's kind of how it started. It starts getting competitive, around the 13-year-old, 12, 13. And that's when you start, doing like races for the whole state of Maine. And that's, traveling every weekend to different ski resorts to race. And you're starting to accumulate, cup points. And there's, it really like takes a level up there. And And that's where, you see some very interesting coaching styles, you see some very interesting parenting. And I know that's like where a lot of your work has been dedicated to like youth sports and how we change change the game and the narrative of what it is that sport gives us and what is the goal of it all.
Yeah. Well, I mean the parenting piece. I years ago I spoke to one of the head U.S. ski team people, and he was just talking about for most people who make it to the international level of skiing, their parents were ski racers as well. So that probably makes you like a little rarity that your parents were skiers but not racers. But I mean, so you a lot of people start early and they come from that family and they come from that background and they just get into that. What was it like? How did your parents support you? And the shout out to your brother who also was a very, very good skier as well. Like, how did they support you and help it be your journey and not theirs?
Yeah, they've done a really good job not vicariously living through our success. I think it helped, honestly, that neither of them were ski racers. Like, it wasn't like they had a taste of it and didn't make it and then wanted to have
Hmm.
their kid who went further than them. It was never a part of their life and journey, which I think was good. They were just happy to see me outside doing something active.
Hmm.
And they supported it just by like enabling the activity. So, taking me to the mountain. Both my parents worked right on the mountain, so I would often like go up there and just ski all day while they were in the office. And kind of that like freedom of just this is your playground, like come back when the lift stopped turning. So
Hmm.
that's really how they enabled that. And then, though they weren't ski racers, my dad was the one who taught my brother and I how to ski. I never
Hmm.
had any other like you know, to learn to ski programs that I was a part of. So he would go out with us and he was like very intentional with our skiing of just like creating a super, super solid fundamental base. And we would do like drills and free skiing with intention.
Hmm.
And he was just trying to make us good skiers. He wasn't really thinking about the racing thing at that point, but that certainly is what propelled me to be, better than my peers at a pretty early age. But what was funny was he wasn't really doing it for ski racing. He just wanted us to be good skiers.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
as a dad who now has older kids, that it's so amazing to go on trips with and, go to Jackson with, go to Snowbird with and just go anywhere and be able to like do that stuff is awesome.
and
Um,
that's all we were doing when we were kids. We
yeah.
we would load up in the family minivan from Maine and drive all the way to Salt Lake and stay in a Motel 6 and go skiing at Snowbird.
Yeah.
This was before we were racing when we were like 8, 9 years old. And
Yeah.
my dad, I just want to go skiing and you guys are coming along with me. So there was definitely like a love and a passion for skiing that he instilled with us. And when we were young and we'd be tired after races and he'd be like, all right, like we're gonna go free skiing. And I'd be like, no, I don't want to. And
Yeah.
he was well, if you're too tired to go free skiing, then you're racing too much. So he was always about like
Mm.
skiing first, racing second. And if you don't want to go free skiing with dad, the checkbook closes. That was always the line of like, yeah, he'll support this. Obviously it's a huge financial commitment the more and more you race.
Yeah.
But he wanted us to never lose just the love of skiing, which is what he had and what got us into this, in the first place.
That's a pretty awesome story because I think the opposite often happens. The
Yeah.
kids want to free ski, and the parents are like, if you don't want to go race, then the checkbook closes. And for
Yeah.
you, is the opposite. I think that's really interesting and really important. Of like, this part where maybe you're competing against others and you're placing and you're getting points. That's one, but the essence of participating in a lifelong sport um, and love of the mountains is was the important part to your dad, which is really cool. Well, I'd say both your
Yeah.
parents, obviously.
And
Yeah.
it didn't have to take away from results and success. And I got to witness that firsthand when my brother first made the U.S. ski team. We were out in Aspen for Colorado for J2 Nationals. So what was he? He was 17 years old.
Hmm.
18 years old, and there was a big powder storm like the day before the downhill, and we went over to Aspen Highlands and hiked the bowl and went skiing all day. And
Hmm.
his coaches were like, "I can't believe you're going free skiing the day before the race." He ended up winning the downhill and winning the slalom and making the U.S. ski team all that week. And we just viewed it as like another ski trip. It wasn't like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, we need to, rest and really focus in, too much on this and make it more than it is.
That's awesome. I mean, I love that story. I didn't know that story about you or him, but I think it's such an important thing is like in this sometimes pursuit of not my favorite word, but elite level competition, right? We lose sight of love of sport and the joy that it brings you and stuff like that. And I think finding that balance, again, of course, it doesn't mean that there's not a time to rest and take care of yourself, but by the same token, the ski racer who says powder day, Nat, I'm gonna stay in bed today, that scares me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so you do this. I mean, you were the um junior world downhill champion. You're on to the US ski team. Maybe talk a little bit about like what's training like for skiing because I think this is a really interesting part of it. Um, because so much of if I run a soccer practice for 90 minutes, hopefully the ball's rolling 70 minutes of that time, right? If you're up there on the mountain, you're riding lifts, you're getting to the course, you're back. So, like, talk about what's the training environment like and how do you maximize it so it's not just the 90 seconds maybe that you're on the course. How do you use the lift? How do you use the ski down to the course? Things like that to become better at what you do.
Yeah, the actual amount of time we spend, ski racing or ski race practicing is super limited. We're talking like minutes a year, like not hours even.
Yeah.
And we travel all around the world all summer long to chase snow down into South America and whatnot. But it takes so much effort, particularly racing downhill and Super G, to set up these venues, to have courses top to bottom that are resemble what we race. So a huge part of like making our time count, if you will,
Mhm.
is one, watching a huge amount of video. Video
Mm,
is relatively cheap to watch. You just need a
yeah.
computer. And you then can relive the training runs you did get. And a lot of like visualization and just notes and notes and notes go into each day of training when we head back out there. Hey, what are the things I'm going to work on from the day before? And then throughout the session, yeah, when you're riding lifts, we're talking to coaches on radios. I'm at a level now that I have a serviceman who's tunes all my skis, and he laps the lift every lap with me. So we're talking about the skis
Mm.
on the chairlift, and so I would say those are a couple of kind of tangible things of like how do you leverage that time? Because you're right, it's really not that that much time you actually spend in the gates.
Yeah. No, I think it's fascinating. And then okay, so just maybe an aside to this and going back to your parents as well, I get ski coaches, especially, junior coaches, call me all the time of like, okay, I have this kid who's great young racer, but their parents are driving me crazy, right? Because the kid finishes that training run and the parents are waiting at the bottom with their iPad and then dissecting film the whole way up, and whatever. And the coach is like, I just need that kid needs some time to themselves. Like, so how is that used on your level? But also, like, what's your advice for a parent who's got a young skier who's like, when's too much too much?
Yeah, for sure. And it's tough, I'm here talking about, how we're using video, how we're using coaching, and that's a lot of then people try to model that at the club level. But the reality is this is a profession. This isn't just like club youth sports, and there comes another level that we have to take it to that isn't necessarily appropriate for everyone to take it to. Because I also ski coach, I run a camp for kids
Hmm.
each June out in Mount Hood, so I get to be on the other side of it for a little bit
Yeah,
and get to experience some parents that are super intense with it. And I gotta say, I think it's fine for a kid to be watching iPad on the chairlift on the way
yeah.
up if he wants to do it
He
or
wants
or
to do
or
it.
she
She
wants to
wants
do
to
it.
do it. Yeah.
It's not, any parent that's like driving, the wagon for the kid, is not going to make it. Or if the kid does make it, he's going to hate it. It has to come driven from the athlete. And I've seen some really, really hungry athletes that are like doing those extra things that you're like, whoa, that's like pretty intense for this level. But when
Mhm.
it's driven by like the athlete's desire, I find that to be much healthier than a coach or a parent just like forcing it on the kid if they're not interested. Because ultimately, you need to have buy-in from the athlete.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important thing. And those kids that have that drive, and maybe you were one of them, like that's unique. It's not normal. Like the
No,
people
and
who reach
that's why not everybody makes it. Yeah, I mean,
right, and that's what I'm saying. And this is like one of the hardest things to convince parents of is that is that the people who make it that you watch on TV they're not normal, right? They have a genetic thing, they have a drive thing, they have, there's a component of luck of not getting injured at the wrong time or the things like that. But it's not normal. Most people don't have that drive to succeed. And I've talked on this podcast about, obviously I know the soccer world best, and you know, Christian Pulisic's dad talks about, it's not for everyone, right? It's really, really, really hard, and there's disappointments, and it's, see you're thrashed on social media and whatever, and benched, and new coaches, and sold to this team and that team, and your life uprooted. It's not normal. And so when you have a kid who wants to do that, I mean, recognize that they're kind of a unicorn. And if your kid doesn't want to do that, just recognize you just got a normal kid, which is perfectly okay too.
yeah, yeah. It's I get asked a lot, what's the common denominator, right? What ties you all together? And there's been droves and droves of books of this. And, of the six guys that are on the World Cup speed team with me, we're all really unique characters.
Mm,
And I think it's important for kids and parents to like lean into their uniqueness of
hmm.
whatever that may be. There isn't a cookie cutter mold. Not all of us came from the same program. Not all of us came from the same. Yeah, some of us have gold medal ski racers for parents like Ryan Cochran Siegel, and
Hmm.
some of us have parents that barely skied at all.
Hmm.
Um, but the three common denominators in skiing that I have found,
Mm,
that feel free to challenge me out there,
hmm.
listeners. But one is you how close a proximity you live to a ski resort, just for consistency of
Hmm.
getting on skis at an early age. And it
Right.
doesn't have to be like the, Palisades, Tahoe biggest resort ever. We be talking Wachusett, like something small, but something that you're consistently skiing.
Hmm.
And then you need to have like a decent level of athleticism. Like, yeah, you
Hmm.
don't have to be the most incredible athlete, but you need to have like a base level of athletics that can be trained. But all of us are pretty good athletes. It's
Hmm.
not like anyone's on there who's not. And then the last thing is you need to either through your parents or through your club or through people have access to resources.
Hmm.
And we're talking money, and that's an unfortunate pillar of it. And there's definitely some kids that didn't have a ton of money, like Bodie Miller,
Hmm.
who made it, but there was people around him that helped support him and get him
Right.
that because it's not a cheap sport. So those are kind of the three things that I tie back together as exciting or not exciting as they sound.
Well, I mean, I think let's go. I mean, it makes sense, right? And if you're missing one, like an access to resources, you better have the other two in abundance, and
You better be
things like
super
that.
athletic and ski a lot.
Yeah.
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 And, I mean, when I coached soccer at University of Vermont, our next door neighbors was the ski team. And so we used to hang out with a lot of them. And I did, especially because I was 25, 26, and just moved from Vail, Colorado, and skiers were my people. And a lot of the ski racers there were 22, 23, had done the US national team and then jumped into college and whatever. So became pretty friendly with a lot of them, but used to play like a lot of pickup soccer with them and things like that. And yeah, phenomenal athletes.
Yeah.
Phenomenal athletes. Like I can't, and the coach, Felix McGrath at the time, like Felix
Yeah.
was
Okay. Felix. Yeah.
unbelievable athlete, like, and just, I mean, he could have been great at whatever he did,
Mhm.
so yeah, I agree. So that's, I mean, I think that's really important for people to, in this sport, and then that mindset to be willing to do the things it takes to get better. And film, I think across a lot of sports now is a big part of it. Um, how often when you're like reviewing film, do you see something on film that you didn't feel in the race? Or is it oftentimes like, yeah, I knew that, or that I knew that line was off or whatever? Like how much of it is feel and how much of it is thought?
I'd say about 50% of the time I'm surprised, and about 50% of the time I go, yeah, that's about what I thought.
Hmm.
Often it doesn't look as bad as you thought it felt. You're like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, that felt terrible, right? And then you go back and watch video and you watch other people and you're like, okay, everybody struggled a bit on that turn, or oh, that actually
Yeah.
wasn't bad. So I would say 50-50. I surprise myself versus know myself.
That's cool. I mean, I think that's interesting because you can't really be going 95 miles an hour and thinking about too much, really, right? Like how much of that is, I mean, that at that point is like you know the course, you know when the air is coming up, you know when the next turn is coming up, and you got to check, bleed some speed or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's
Like,
it's very subconscious. You've like gone through the plan so many times, and then as soon as you kick out of the gate, it's much more reactive. At that point, it's going too fast to have a whole lot of conscious thought of I'm going to do this. You have had to have rehearsed that mentally already.
yeah. What are, let's talk about the inside game of this in a couple ways as well, because I find this really interesting. And I actually heard like a professional big mountain skier, filmmaker say this, and it's always kind of stuck with me. And I got to think this holds true for your thing as well. And what he said was, when you're doing a run, if you're not scared to death, you're not making the film. you know and I gotta think there's something about what you're doing that, like, when you are skiing fast enough to make a podium, like you're on the very edge of your ability. So talk about that, because this is what really fascinates me about skiers or big wave surfers or things like that.
Yeah. I think of it as you have like your baseline comfortability, right? That you could go out there and do that 10 times out of 10. And everyone kind of has that line. It's all relative. And then beyond that in the races, okay, I can push maybe how do I say percentages, but 2 clicks further or 20%, you know, higher than my baseline skiing. And my whole career, I focused on just like trying to raise that baseline skiing because to just be like, well, I'm just gonna go really, really hard today because it's race day. Like you can't, we call that then like skiing beyond yourself. And
Mm,
that's when you're trying to go flat 5 clicks higher than your baseline.
hmm.
Um, but as I've gotten better and gotten older and more experience on these tracks, I'm still only going those 2 notches above my baseline, or whatever you want to call it, 20% harder. But my baseline is that much higher. And
Right.
that baseline gets higher through lots of training, through repetition, getting more comfortable and slowly like raising that baseline. But yeah, on these big tracks now, when you do push beyond your kind of baseline comfort, the consequences are much higher. The speeds
Mm,
are higher, the jumps are bigger. The safety is pretty incredible at these modern venues. But yeah, you have to be willing on race day to really risk it. In my life, I do a lot of other dangerous sports, rock climbing, mountain biking, whitewater kayaking, all kinds of stuff. And all of those, I take that last couple percent and I dial it back. I don't go that hard. Ski racing is where I let myself like turn the dial to 11. And that's because there's a helicopter sitting there with the EMTs, at the ready.
hmm.
And, but yeah, if you want to make the podium, if you want to have those big results, particularly in downhill, you have to be willing to take a step out of your comfort zone. And I think that's where you see people like Michaela Schifrin. Her
Hmm.
baseline is so high that
Hmm.
her like 1 notch beyond is more than enough to win.
Yeah. And that's,
Um,
I
yeah,
mean, I think this is so important. And just to reemphasize, and your baseline is not what you decide on race day, it's what you've spent years building towards,
yeah, yeah,
right? So you didn't ski 95 miles an hour this year after only skiing 75 last year. Like
yeah.
you're layering on, so you're building strength and balance and coordination on the dry land, and you're working on film, and you're doing all these things, and equipment's getting better, and you're dialing in with your technician and all this sort of stuff. Like but I think that's like such an important part is that it's not about throwing all caution to the wind, um, because that's just
Reckless.
silly.
It's just reckless.
That's
And
just reckless.
surgery is expensive.
Surgery is expensive. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I often tell like groups of young kids or young parents that I'm speaking with that I think your listeners would really enjoy was is my concept that I come up with of the silver buckshot. So we've all heard of like the silver bullet or the golden ticket, right? Everybody wants the one thing that's going to make them better. They want that new skis, they want that new
Mhm.
coach. And you can't sit here and say, well, those new skis wouldn't help you. Like, of course, like some things are beneficial, but the sum of the parts makes the masterpiece. And it's really important as I talk to parents and young kids is don't go chasing that golden ticket of that one thing that's going to make you great. I have seen a lot of kids just like looking for that, and not willing to take care of all the less flashy, mundane tasks that you just listed, whether it's watching video, whether it's doing your dryland, doing your recovery, tuning your skis. All of those things are going to what's going to contribute to a successful race day. And it's not necessarily the most, flashy way to do it, but that's the way it's done.
Yeah, I mean, I think we live in this world where, I mean, obviously we're sold, here's the hack, right?
Yeah.
Here's the hack that shortcuts it, but none of that's real. None of that's true. It doesn't really, yeah, like you said, a nice pair of skis is helpful, but without everything else, it's just a nice pair of skis, you know? And certainly ski resorts are famous for people with nice gear who can't ski, right?
Yeah.
So so I mean, I think this is a really important thing, and I say this all the time, having written books for parents about, hey, how you can help your kids, how you can give them ownership and communicate better about this and all this, and yet most people would never grab a $20 book. They just rather buy the new $300 carbon fiber baseball bat,
Yeah.
like that's going to change everything, and yet your kid doesn't love it, or your kid is scared, or your kid is feels like they're disappointing you, or all these different things that have a far bigger effect
Yeah.
on that. So yeah, I mean, so I think it's so important that people hear things like that from you. And I like this idea of like don't ignore the things that seem boring, because it's often the little things that are the big things, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I really like your your analogy of yeah, parents want to go buy the brand new baseball bat instead of dealing with yeah, kind of the emotional side of the sport. And it's interesting looking at the six of us that are on the World Cup men's speed team and know I know every one of the parents that are there. And I can say pretty solidly that not a single one of those parents is like you're uptight wanting their kid to win. Like, yeah, they get up in 3 in the morning to watch it, because they love to watch their son perform. But none of them are those like super eager parents, like being, riding the emotional roller coaster of their kids' successes. Like they've had their own careers and they support their kids, but it's interesting at this level, all those parents are pretty chill and honestly could take it or leave it of like, oh, they had a great weekend or oh, they didn't, which is pretty wild.
Well, it's nice that you get to go to
Yeah,
watch your kid in a lot of nice spots too, versus like
that
some
helps.
convention center in Reno. So that's a plus for sure. Okay, so we had I want to sort of bounce some ideas off you. We just had this guy in the podcast, Steve Magnus, and Steve was a track coach, and he was actually like the whistleblower in the Nike Oregon project and everything, but super high level international track coach, University of Houston, all that sort of stuff, top level performer himself. He just came out with a new book called Win the Inside Game. And he didn't call it the inner game. It's not just about mind chatter. He was like, really, how do you get yourself right inside so that you can perform on the outside? And he had sort of three areas that he felt like were the most important. So I want to kind of bounce through them with you. No, number one was being really clear on like, who am I? Like, who am I? Right? Like, who is Sam, and why is Sam doing this? Right? And I think that is a really interesting part that especially so many young athletes lose, is they lose sight of themselves in sport. So it's all I am is Sam the, I'm Sam the skier, not Sam the guy who is really good at skiing, but is a rock climber and a kayaker and a husband and all these other things. So maybe from your own perspective, like talk about the importance there of your identity and your self-worth in terms of being a high-level athlete.
Yeah, I am certainly known to Google as Sam Morse, the ski racer, and
Yeah.
that's cool and all, but the reality is that'll be over in a handful of years, and then yeah, then you're really faced with the question of who am I, and that's what my wife's whole life work has been dedicated to with the sideline perspective and our work with the U.S. Olympic Committee of yeah, how does athlete identity, what can we do now while you're still an athlete or while you're becoming an athlete, so then when you do retire from sport, you don't have just a huge identity crisis.
Hmm.
Uh, for me, a huge piece of that is that I grew up with two parents that are ski resort ministers. And so I'm a person of faith and believe in God and believe that my purpose on this earth is not just to ski fast, though I think that does bring joy to God, but that I'm also here to make the world a better place. And
Hmm.
that gives me a much deeper identity and purpose than just Sam Morse, the ski racer,
Hmm.
because it comes down to hundredths of a second, and sometimes I'm on the right side of those, and sometimes I'm not, and it's hard not to get wrapped up in that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh yeah, I don't care, if I do
Hmm.
well and it doesn't affect my mood. It totally does, and I've tried to like ride that stable wave through the highs and lows of not wrapping my identity up in the sport. And I think I've gotten pretty good at it. And the reason I know is because I've had certain coaches come up to me and be like, you need to be more upset after today. And I'm like, dude, come on. Or like,
Yeah.
you need to be more of a jerk to win. I'm like,
Yeah.
really? Like, if that's what it takes, I'm not interested. So
Yeah.
I think I actually have been able to kind of yeah, smooth out that emotional roller coaster of not wrapping my identity so much up in my results. But it's a continued work in progress, and I am by no means perfect at it.
Yeah. Well, you sort of hinted at his sort of part two was, clarity of who you are, and part two is clarity of your purpose, right?
Mhm.
So and what you just sort of described is a higher purpose than winning,
Yeah.
right? Like there's a higher purpose and it's this, for you it's a Christian purpose, which is awesome, and for other people there might be a different purpose, right? Raising money for a cause they care about or whatever. But I think this is a really common denominator of the best teams and coaches and stuff we worked with is they all sort of have this collective purpose that goes beyond how we do on Saturday.
Yeah.
That I think
No,
is
and,
really
and
important.
the faith stuff aside, I think my dad's passion of skiing that he was trying to pass on to us is what he wants, what he always wanted the purpose of it to be, like
Hmm.
to enjoy the sport of skiing. And you can enjoy even when you don't win. And when I went to the Way of Champions conference a number of years ago with you guys, we did a lot of fun stuff there, but the thing that I remember of like what was the major message, and maybe this wasn't your major message, but this is what I remember is,
Hmm.
hey guys, hey coaches, athletes that are here, let's try to not make sports just about winning. And of
Hmm.
course, sports are inevitably a game in which someone wins.
Hmm.
Uh, but let's not let, just the drive to win affect how we treat people and how we run our teams and, what players we put in. And in ski racing, I partially chose, for those of you who don't know alpine ski racing, there's four major disciplines: slalom, GS, Super G, and downhill. And I'm a downhill Super G skier. And part of the reason I am that is because in slalom and GS, you get to the bottom and you immediately want to know what your time is. It's a super, super technical side of the sport. It's just kind of like it's lower speeds, you're refining technique, trying to have these like flawless runs. Where downhill and Super G is much more like big wave surfing. It is just like riding the mountain top to
Hmm.
bottom. And it is a joy to do whether you come in first or last. And
Hmm.
I just loved downhill and Super G because I got to the bottom and I didn't care what my time was.
Hmm.
Because I'd tapped into like just the joy of what the sport was, regardless of the outcome. So a huge part of me of like, did I fulfill my purpose out there on the day? Was like, did I enjoy skiing as an activity, regardless of how I did? And some days I can say that I achieved that purpose, and other days I just get so wrapped up in how I did that it sucks the joy out of it.
Do you notice a difference in how you ski depending on where you fall on that side of the line?
Um, I mean, it's always then like the following weeks that then that affects, right?
Oh, okay.
If I'm after a day, just like, oh man, that was like really tough, and it takes me like much longer to bounce back. That's
Hmm.
what I would do that. Like, and the days that I can stay true to that purpose of enjoying skiing, regardless of the outcomes, if I end up having a crappy day, I can just bounce back much quicker.
Hmm.
And we're often racing like 2 times in a weekend, so we got
Hmm.
to like bounce back and race the next day.
Yeah, and I think I mean, that's an important thing to get across as well. People at the top level of sport have bad days and good days, right? We don't all have all good days, so it's really, what can you do on the days when you're not at your best that help you, help you, so when you are feeling when the stars align, hey, maybe that's my chance to get in a podium. But then there's got to be other days where I got to show up to practice and I'm not at my best and I didn't sleep well and I'm not feeling great and whatever. And I still need to get the most out of those moments that I can. So, and that's
Yeah,
where that's, yeah.
that's where I would say I have a superpower of like what makes me different as an athlete. Like I'm not the most athletic, I'm not the best skier, but I am grittier than almost any ski racer out there.
Hmm,
And I can grind when it is awful.
hmm.
Often I think I honestly chose the wrong sport. I should have done like endurance bike racing or something.
Just
Um,
pure
but there's
pain.
but there's like an endurance to the season that like just weighs on you and you just get like tired and run down. And I've been super grateful that just like naturally, like I love the grind.
Mhm.
And so when it's crappy weather out there and it's early, like, yeah, I'm uncomfortable, but there's a twisted part of me that kind of enjoys that.
Yeah. One of the most impressive athletes I feel like we've ever had in the podcast here was a ice hockey player who I met when I worked at UVM named Marty St. Louis, and he's the coach of the Canadians now, but a Hall of Famer, but took him until he was like 24, 25 to break into the NHL. But when I knew Marty, he was the hardest working guy. I like just grinder, just chasing after. He knew who he was. He had this purpose and this goal. It was all him, and he just needed the moment, the right coach, the right system, and next thing you know, he went from like fourth line guy to leading scorer of the NHL in 2 years, right? So it wasn't just him, it was something else. But when I had him on the podcast, I said, what was your superpower? And the way he put it, similar to you, is he goes, you know what, I was just really good at getting better. He's just really good at showing up every day and getting a little bit better and a little bit better, even on those bad days. And he goes, and I think I was better than most people at that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah,
great story.
it's super cool. All right, so part three of this inside game, which I want to bounce off of you, he said a sense of belonging. So not right? So clarity of who you are, clarity of purpose, and then a sense of true belonging, not fitting in, but feeling like you're a part of something bigger. And I'm always curious in like ski racing and swimming and track, these things that we call individual sports, yet the team is a part of it. You have six teammates that are part of this speed team that you practice together, you travel together, you look out for each other. So, how important is that sense of belonging and support of each other? Like, I'm picturing you all, just like you said, when you ski the mountain from top to bottom at top speed, there's just this joy of like, man, that was incredible. I don't care what my time was. That felt awesome. Just like the big wave server, just like, I love watching big mountain ski competitions when everyone celebrates everyone else's success. It's not this zero sum game. Sam had a good day, so that means all of a sudden I had a bad day. It's like Sam just took the sport to a new level. Like that was amazing. So talk about that and the sense of belonging and how important that is, even as someone who at the race itself, you're kind of on your own.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite parts about ski racing is you get to be friends with all the competitors, not just your own teammates. Because when it comes down to the actual competition, you're solely competing against yourself. How anyone else does has no actual physical bearing on how you may do.
Hmm.
It's not like a hockey or soccer where you're actually physically playing against one another. In ski racing, we all get to go one at a time, and if you mess it up, that's on you. Like nobody else, checked you into the boards. That was just you. So
Hmm.
that makes for a really cool community of, the tribe of downhill ski racers in which we get to support each other and it doesn't feel nearly as like us versus them. It's you versus yourself. In terms of our six guys, we fall under this like title that has been given passed down over generations as being American downhillers.
Hmm.
And that's kind of born out of like Tommy Johnson originally, not sorry, Billy
Bill
Johnson,
Johnson, yeah.
Bill Johnson originally, and then through the Tommy Moe era, and then obviously Brody and Darren, and they've just kind of coined this term, the American downhillers. And obviously, we're on the US ski team and we're downhillers, but even more than that, we're part of this tribe of American downhillers. And Mark O'Sullivan has since started a ski camp for kids that we can go and coach at in Mammoth each spring. And that tribe and community and sense of belonging has probably been like the most powerful community within ski racing to be part of, partially because it goes beyond the ski team. There's so much politics involved in the ski team and the coaches changing over and just yeah, the staff like comes and goes, but the athletes are really the ones that hold the institutional knowledge of it all. And our brotherhood then is like tied underneath this American downhiller kind of banner, if you will.
That's cool. That's awesome. And I mean, like culture matters. I remember one of the first ski organizations I worked with was Ski Club Vale. And I was doing some off-season coach education work. And the other speaker on the day was Christian Mitter, who was coaching Norwegian Alpine team at the time, right? I was like fascinated to see what he was going to talk about. And his talk was called "Culture Comes First," right? And he was just like team matters because if one guy is out too late or not eating well, like his teammates keep him in line. The practice environment, the dry land environment, all this. So, like you said, even though on the race course it's just you and the mountain, those six other guys, and let's extend the team to the techs and the coaches and everything, that togetherness and sense of belonging is so important because, especially on the days that you're having a bad day, like, come on, Sam. I know it's not the best day, but you can do a little better than you're doing now, right? So, I mean, talk about that because I get parents tell me it's an individual sport. Don't talk to me about team culture, especially with kids, because I'm like, but team dynamics are what actually also drives enjoyment,
Yeah.
right? Like that makes you want to be a part of it as well.
Yeah, I would say that's really the big thing for me. Like, why bother trying to contribute to a positive team culture? Well, because it's more fun to be around.
Yeah.
And the crew of guys that I get to travel and we basically live together for like 8 months out of the year. You get really, really close with those guys. And if you are just like, don't get along with them and are always button heads, like it's exhausting to be
Mhm.
around, not particularly productive to focus on. You don't feel supported. You don't feel encouraged. Those are all things that I get from this community. Like those guys support me. Those guys encourage me. Those guys help me watch video, particularly like the older kind of mentorship roles that certain guys have on the team. That's really important, particularly in something like downhill ski race, downhill. Compared to the tech events, because these tracks are so long and so complicated and there's kind of this like pass down of knowledge on a lot of these tracks, and it's really cool when those old guys are like, "Hey, like try this on this turn." Like I discovered this new line, 6 years ago. Give it a try. And the importance of community within that, I will say, is what helps you bounce back from those really tough days. Because you know that, all of us know what it's like to go through that, and just a
Mhm.
word of encouragement to one another, like, hey man, like you can turn this around in one race. Like, don't let this completely define you. That can go a long way coming from your teammate. And I have to
Yeah.
say, I respect what my teammates have to say more than almost anybody in the world. Like those are the people that lived it with you. They also went down the track. They also know how hard it is. And after a good day, like when you get a positive word of affirmation from one of your like fellow competitors, to me, that's like where some of the most satisfaction of the whole thing comes from. Like it's not the applause and the flower ceremony is the podium. It's like when one of the best guys in the world comes up to you and, I had a great day because I came in 15th and maybe
Hmm.
he had a crappy day and came in fifth, but he
Hmm.
recognized like where you're at in your journey. And he's like, hey man, like great skiing out there today. And
Yeah.
like, that's huge.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine I mean, again, we live in this world of social media where everyone gets a platform and an opinion, and how many people put stock into someone's opinion who doesn't know you at all,
Yeah.
or they put equal stock into that as the person who's, like you said, just lived with you for the last 8 months.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, so and so said I suck today, and you said I'm good, so it's even. It's like, no, it's not even. Who is that person, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What about like those mentors and those senior people as well? I imagine like coming onto a course where maybe you've struggled or you haven't skied well or you've crashed before, or people who have an injury. I remember Christian Mitter in that talk. I don't remember all the Norwegian skiers thing, but he was talking about one of their skiers who had crashed on the Birds of Prey course at Beaver Creek and coming back the next year, and it was a really bad crash. And how he could prepare mentally knowing that final air is coming at the bottom or whatever, where he had gotten really badly hurt. So I imagine the teammates really can help with that kind of stuff too, huh?
Yeah. That was Axel Lund Svindal. He
Yes, yes, there you
went
go.
off the Golden Eagle jump and got back and landed like tails in
Oh, it was
first.
awful
Yeah, and then ended up like tearing his Achilles later in the year, and then he came back and won a world champs medal at Beaver Creek in
at
like
Beaver
less than
Creek.
a year. It was an insane comeback story. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, after you've had like a traumatic crash on a course, you get back in the starting gate of that course, and it's nerve-wracking and usually ski not great your first time down it, and that's why like training runs are really nice to kind of get
Yeah,
over that. But I would also say you feel incredibly alone in the start gate. Like, yeah, your teammates can be encouraging, but at the end of the day, like you're in the start gate alone and you got to decide how fast you want to go down that course.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, they can help encourage you, but I also think there is a part of like solo lone wolfing it to the sport that
yeah,
I don't want to completely disregard because I think certain people really do struggle with that and recognizing that like no, you have to be brave and courageous on your own to like get back on the saddle and only you can do that in the
yeah.
end.
It's what's amazing about that. I mean, I don't know if you have a history with team sports yourself, because you're talking about rock climbing and kayaking and obviously skiing
Of
and
other individual sports now.
well, individual, but I only say it because my son who's 17 and played soccer his whole life and stuff like that decided a couple months ago to take up boxing, right? And he's like, man, it's really the first time he was like sparring, and he's like, it's just me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's just me, right? And it's just that whole mentality. But it's been really amazing for him and his self-confidence and everything of like, okay, like I can do this. I can do this. And I was again a team guy or whatever my whole life. And I remember the first time I did like an individual thing, I was like, well, this is kind of weird, you know? There's no one to rely on or no one to blame.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's been really interesting in my marriage with Mackenzie, who was a hockey player and a rugby player. She
Yeah.
always played team sports and she always wants a team around her and to talk it through with people. And I'm much more just like bullheaded. I'm gonna go out on my own and I'm gonna get this done, you know? So we've had to work on that. I've had to become a better team player.
Yeah, learning to collaborate. I'm a little bit like you, even though I played team sports. It's kind of like why I own my own business. Like I'm just going to make all the decisions here. That's it. I don't have to rely on anyone
He's like,
else.
don't you want to get other people's opinions? I'm like, No.
I feel pretty good about mine. I think I got this dialed. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
hear
I
you,
think that is
man.
the beauty of a lot of those individual sports. It really does breed this kind of self-confidence, which for good or for bad, but it has certainly helped me in a lot of ways. Yeah, to be entrepreneur, to start things, to take the road less traveled. I don't need everyone to tell me, "Oh yeah, this is a good idea," and I'm with you. Like I'm willing to brave it on my own a little bit, which can be really good.
It's interesting. I mean, I grew up in a family where my dad had his own business and my mom so my dad was a New York City firefighter who got hurt and then had to become a lawyer because he couldn't be a firefighter anymore. But it was his own law practice. And my mom was a chef and had her own business. And I think it's no coincidence that me, my brother, and sister all own our own businesses because we never once sat around the dinner table listening to our parents complain about their boss. There
Right.
was no learned helplessness, right?
Yeah.
No, oh, it's out of my control. It was like, oh, if there's a problem, I have to fix it. And I think that's a really interesting mindset that individual sports kind of, or ones where you compete individually really bring around. It's like, duh, it's on me. It's on me in this moment. So, yeah. Speaking of on you, I said I wasn't going to let you go without talking about you're doing this call from Dartmouth,
Yep.
and you're in year 8, you said, and it's I think it's Tommy Boy that says, oh, they call them doctors, but no, you're on the one semester a year for 12-year plan to graduate, which I think is amazing that Dartmouth does that. But talk about your college journey along this as well, because getting this degree is super important to you as well.
Yeah, it's a battle each spring to get back here at Dartmouth. The coaches on the US ski team don't want you to do it. They want you to live, breathe, and eat ski racing 365 days a year. And unfortunately, I'm not Michaela Schifrin, and I will most likely have to get a job after I'm done with this. And I would like a college degree when I go to do that. So I think it's still really important. It's also just an incredible break for the mind. Like when you feel like you're getting burnt out on ski racing, go do some math homework, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I want to go ski racing again.
And you're engineering, right, or something like that, mechanical
Yes. Yep.
engineering.
I'm mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
And yeah, partway through my junior year, have a midterm in 2 days. I was literally studying right before you called me, and I'll go back to studying. But it's really hard. There's an incredible set of skills I bring to the table, being older, super organized. You don't miss deadlines. I'm not out partying. I'm
hmm
well rested, but like I don't remember a lot of particular like mathematical nuances that I have to
Well,
go put.
especially when you're taking off 8 months in between each
Yeah.
course, right?
Yeah, I forget a lot and it just requires more review. And it also like I you also have to accept a bit of mediocrity. I'm competing against some of the smartest brains in the world here at Dartmouth.
Yeah.
And for me to hang on to the median is a great success. And
hmm
that took a little bit of adjustment just coming from from high school and from skiing where like, I was the best, right? And like
hmm
you used to nothing but being on the top and to
hmm
be humbled to know that, hey, just to be here and just to pass, like that's enough too.
That's cool. I a couple months ago had Ashton Eaton on the podcast. Ashton, decathlon champion and 2 Olympics world record holder, and we were talking about this transition out of sport, and we were talking about this like what can you bring to the table as an athlete that makes you unique? Because he almost describes, he's like, when I went into the business world, I just felt like an idiot. Like all these people have 10 years, 20 years ahead of me in this business. He goes, but what I realized is as an athlete, I had a set of skills that they didn't have, right? The discipline, the work effort, overcoming adversity. He goes, but the thing that my bosses are always shocked at is I go in, I'm like, coach me, make me better.
Yeah.
What am I need to do? And they're like, no one else asks for help, right? They're all afraid, like if they ask for help, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm gonna get fired. And Ashton's like, teach me more. Like that's what I'm used to my whole life. And so you got that. You got a lot of skill set that's
Yeah.
very usable.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, you got to be coachable, and that's helpful to be coachable in all areas of life.
Brilliant. Well, any final words, Sam, and then I want you just to just share sort of how people can follow your career, connect on Instagram or whatever is where I see your comings and goings and your results. And if you want to talk about like your camps and the work you do as well outside of skiing or through skiing.
Yeah. In summary of this talk, great getting to catch up with you and bringing it back to that book that you were kind of remarking the 3 points. For me, that comes down to like identity, community, and purpose. And
Hmm.
I encourage whether you're a coach or an athlete listening to this, like pull out a piece of paper and write down where do you find your identity, what's your purpose, and who's your community.
Hmm.
And be honest with yourself and maybe put, where you're at and where you want to be, or if this is where you want to be. I think that could be really powerful, no matter what you're trying to achieve. In terms of following along with ski racing, yeah, definitely follow me on Instagram at Sam Morse Ski, and follow the US Ski Team's channels as well. We don't start racing until November of next year, but I'll be traveling the world skiing in cool places in the summer, which people always like to see see what the Southern Hemisphere looks like in July,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
it's a place. And yeah, I'm
Awesome.
actually going to be on the coaching side of it
Oh
in
yeah.
about a month out at June, in June out at Mount Hood. I run something called the Sam Morse Fast Camp, which stands for Faith in Ski Training. So for those of you who might be familiar with like FCA, like Fellowship of Christian Athletes, it's basically a faith-based ski racing camp out at Mount Hood for young kids to get some summer training in. And we literally go through a lot of these 3 things that we just talked about, like identity, community, and purpose with these kids and where
Mm.
they find that and how to create holistic athlete development. I can do a lot of things to make you a faster ski racer quickly, but I'm not really that interested in that because I think there's a lot more that I can do to help kids and
Ah,
help kids.
brilliant. Sounds like an amazing camp that is far better than just the ski skills camp or the soccer skills camp or whatever. Like these are things that stick with you forever, Sam. So,
Yeah. And
man, yeah,
one last closing thought that
yeah.
I've thought about a lot is kind of from the sports psychology standpoint. And not to pick on Michaela Schifrin because I think she's phenomenal. She's one of the greatest skiers of all time. But I see a lot of super elite, high performing athletes that maybe do it in not always the healthiest of ways.
Hmm.
And part of that comes down to how you learn to be satisfied.
Mm.
Um, there's an incredible motivation factor to never being satisfied. And a lot of the great, truly elite athletes were never satisfied. They always wanted more. And that'll drive you to perform, to train harder, to do some incredible things. But I just push back on that notion of, yeah, what is it really all about in the end? Is it really just about winning as many times as you can? And if that's all it's about for you, great, go for it. For me, that's not what it's about. I want to end a week of racing or end a weekend feeling satisfied that I accomplished something and not immediately belittling it to then move on to the next thing and having that discipline to celebrate those small wins, whether I just did great on one sector of a course or if I did have a good result at the bottom, but taking that moment to enjoy that and not just doubling down immediately, oh, I can do this better, I can do that better. Yes, that will, bring you to the next level, but at the same time, you will leave the sport depressed, full of anxiety, and pretty dissatisfied with it all. And I've seen a lot of athletes go through that. So that's my
Yeah,
last.
I think that's a really fascinating thought, and you can extend that
Yeah,
into
a whole
you
book.
this is no, but like the business world as well, where people build this incredible company and they make all this money, and their kids hate them, and they're
Yeah.
divorced, and at the end they're shallow and empty and alone,
Yeah.
right? And so it's towing that line between that selfish drive for
Hmm.
there and that selfless need to serve and also be a whole human being. And, if you go too far toward that one side, yeah, you might win, but
Hmm.
you also might get injured, never win, and have nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Sam, thanks for being on the Way of Champions, man. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thanks again to Sam. Connect with him, Sam Morse Ski. All these are in the show notes below. But what a super cool conversation from talking about the role of his parents to the common denominators, his silver buckshots. And I really love this part about joy of skiing and his how he resonated with this idea of purpose and clarity of self and sense of belonging and how important that was. So thanks again to Sam. Thank you all for listening. Thanks to Sprocket Sports. Thanks to everyone who's ordered books or uh, premium membership, Patreon members, all that sort of stuff. We really, really appreciate your support in everything that we do here. Yeah, just thank you. Reach out. Any questions, any thoughts, John at changingthegameproject.com, speaker, whatever you're looking for. We'd love to help you out and help you change the game in your community because, as we always say, your influence is never neutral. So go out there, change the world, make a difference in it this week, and we'll see you again next week, everyone.